The cold, sterile air of the cryo chamber hummed softly as General Marcus Kane slowly came to life. His eyes fluttered open, the world around him blurry and unfamiliar. The last thing he remembered was being ordered into cryo sleep years ago, possibly decades, before the war had truly begun. Now, as he lay in the tube, a sharp chill crawled through his veins, but his body's automatic systems began to warm him up, bringing him back to full consciousness. With a hiss, the chamber opened, and General Kane stepped out, his boots making a dull thud against the floor. He could still feel the weight of his armor, the same one he had worn when he'd been put to sleep. His senses returned in a flood, and the realization hit him hard. The war, the fight for humanity's survival, the reason he had volunteered for this mission, an unsung hero in cryosleep. He had been one of the few humans chosen to enter this deep, long-term cryostasis, the rest of his unit having already fallen in battle. The alien forces, known only as the Xendar, had been relentless in their assault, wiping out human colonies and decimating fleets. The last message he received was grim. Humanity was losing. There had been no sign of victory. A soft, synthetic voice echoed in the cold silence of the chamber. General Marcus Kane, you have awakened. Proceed to the command center for a status update. Still groggy, Kane straightened himself, trying to ignore the disorienting feeling in his limbs as he followed the instructions. His mind raced. What had happened? Where was the battle? Where were the Xendar? The journey to the command center was quick, and as the doors slid open, he entered a room filled with blinking lights, holographic screens, and a collection of officers he did not recognize. They stood at attention as he entered, but something was wrong. Their faces were devoid of urgency. There was no fear in their eyes, no anger, no desperation. General Kane, said one of the officers, a woman with short black hair and a serious expression. We've been expecting you. Expecting me. Kane repeated, confusion creeping into his voice. The war is still going, isn't it? The officer glanced at him for a moment before speaking again. The war has already ended. Kane's chest tightened. What do you mean? The Xendar. They surrendered. The officer interrupted, her tone almost casual. The human counteroffensive, led by the newly developed Phase 6 technology, completely overwhelmed them. Within a matter of hours, they were defeated. We haven't had a war in nearly 3 months. 3 months? Kane's head spun. But I was just frozen. It feels like I've been asleep for 100 years. The officer nodded. It was nearly 2 years, but the war ended in hours, not months. Kane shook his head, still trying to process the information. How could that be possible? The last he'd known, humanity had been on the brink of extinction. He prepared to wake up to a galaxy ravaged by an unstoppable alien force. I need to see the data, Kane demanded. I need to know how this happened. The officer complied, activating a hologram that displayed an image of a massive, newly developed spaceship, sleek, dark, and gleaming with an almost eerie power. This is the Phase 6 battlecruiser. It's capable of manipulating space-time. With this technology, we could tear apart entire fleets in seconds. The Xendar never stood a chance. Kane's jaw clenched. And why wasn't I told about this? You were the last human general to remain in cryosleep, the officer replied. By the time we had fully developed the Phase 6 technology, humanity had already turned the tide of war. The Xendar didn't have the resources to fight against such power. They surrendered quickly. Kane stared at the hologram, his mind still trying to wrap itself around the enormity of the situation. A war that had seemed impossible to win was now over. It was hard to grasp, but at the same time, a sense of pride filled him. Humanity had prevailed, not with sheer numbers, not with overwhelming force, but with ingenuity, with brilliance. But where are the Xendar now? Kane asked, his voice calmer, but still filled with lingering suspicion. We've imprisoned them, the officer said flatly. They're being held on a station in the Outer Rim. We've made it clear that they will never threaten humanity again. Kane's eyes narrowed. And their leaders? They're negotiating a peace treaty, but they're on the verge of extinction. They've been warned. If they break the treaty, we'll wipe them out. A strange calm fell over Kane. The war was over. It had ended not in the brutal, bloody fashion he had imagined, but through strategy and sheer power. Humanity had taken control of its own future. What happens now? Kay asked. Now? The officer paused. Now, General, humanity stands at the forefront of the galaxy. With the Phase 6 technology, we have a chance to establish our dominance. The future is ours. Kane nodded slowly. He understood. The galaxy was vast, but humanity was now an unstoppable force. As he stood there, looking out at the stars through the command center's panoramic windows, something deep inside him stirred. The war might have ended in a matter of hours, but the journey was just beginning. Humanity had faced its greatest threat and had won, but now it was time to rebuild, to explore, and to assert its place in the galaxy. General Marcus Kane had fought for humanity's survival, and now he would lead them into a future no one could have predicted. A future where human brilliance and strength would shine brighter than ever before. And as the stars blinked in the distance, one thing was certain: no one would ever challenge humanity again.